Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
New on Curiosity Stream.
I'm James Burke. I'm going to take you on a journey through time.
James Burke's visionary series returns, reimagined for our time.
Now, this is all uncharted territory.
The Washington Post hails Burke as one of the most intriguing minds in the Western world. The New York Times raves he careens from one great moment in history to another.
Where do we want to go from here?
Experience all new Connections.
So what's the next connection?
With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Hey guys, what's poppin'? It is me, your host, your girl, Elena Grace, and today we are actually dealing with a more somber subject than usual. Because it is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we are going to be discussing the very awful subject of sexual assault on males. It is extremely underreported. It is far less discussed than it deserves to be. And it is a genuine problem and something that I want to use my platform to bring some awareness to, because it breaks my heart. Sexual assault of any kind hits really close to home for me, and it is one of my deepest regrets that it's something we have to ever talk about at all. And because of toxic masculinity and societal expectations and all of these things, people truly think that it is not a problem that men have to deal with, and they're dead wrong. Absolutely wrong. So, without further ado, gonna get into some really good information on this topic, and also I have some input from a survivor, a male survivor of sexual assault by a woman. He has asked to stay anonymous, but I think that it provides really, really important insight into the subject. So, now, like I kind of mentioned, it's a really common myth that men, quote, can't be sexually assaulted, which is truly the deepest roots of toxic masculinity and misogyny kind of blending together and growing into this disgusting, sick plant. Men are sexually assaulted, though, regardless of their size, their strength, their looks, their sexual orientation. It does not matter. In fact, about 3% of American men, or 1 in 33, have experienced an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. Now, keep in mind, though, that this is based on reporting. I would wager that the actual percentage is much higher because so many men don't report or don't acknowledge that that's even what has happened to them. And 11.7% of men have reported experiencing unwanted sexual content at all. So again, keep in mind that this is based on reporting. those who even acknowledge that this has happened to them. It is, in all probability, I would say, a good bit higher than that. Now, it is further a myth that only gay men are sexually assaulted. Which, like I said earlier, it happens to anybody, regardless of your sexual orientation, your looks, anything. But in reality, the likelihood is the same, because your orientation has nothing to do with what another person decides to do to you. Orientation has nothing to do with any of it at all, really, which, by debunking the myth that only gay men sexually assault other men, we can prove. In fact, most of the men who sexually assault other men actually identify as heterosexual, which just highlights the reality that sexual assault is not really about lust or attraction or any of those things, really. It's about violence and control and power, which is exactly how more than 1/4 of male victims of completed rape, it's actually 27.8%, experienced their first rape when they were 10 years of age or younger. Because it doesn't matter if they're sexy or if they're gay or if they're a big, strong man or any of those things. What matters is that the victim is being controlled and humiliated and dominated by a vile abuser. Now, I think it is further important to hit on the fact that physiological responses do not negate that this was an attack. This is so important because this is something that is used by abusers to manipulate their victims, and it's also something that is used by victims kind of in the back of their head. They say, well, I had a response to this, so I must have liked it on some level or another. And that is not true. Erection and ejaculation do not in any way imply that you wanted or enjoyed what happened to you. And it also means nothing regarding your sexual orientation either. These are direct responses of the body that can physically be manifest by extreme stress, which, surprise, surprise, is what your body is going through when it's being assaulted. And like I said, a lot of perpetrators use these kinds of reactions to manipulate their victims, which discourages them from reporting the crime and giving the abuser more control over the situation and over the victim. Now, I also want to discuss the fact that the majority of perpetrators of sexual violence are male, but that does not mean that men cannot be sexually assaulted by women. Perhaps the reason that most perpetrators are men is because it goes underreported when it's committed by a woman. I don't know for sure, but truly that is my supposition, because female sexual assault towards men isn't always considered assault by outsiders. And in many ways, I think that is made way worse because it's often celebrated by the media in movies and in TV and music, where teen boys are being assaulted by older women. They're being groomed, they're sexually assaulted, whatever it is. And that kind of relationship is fetishized and glorified, so that when it happens in real life, the victims are kind of told, well, you should be grateful for that kind of attention. That older woman thinks you're hot. You know, you're better than other people because you receive that attention. But that's toxic, manipulative behavior, and it's got to go. Because we don't tell 16-year-old girls that they're special because a creepy old teacher told them they're pretty. So why do we do that for teenage boys when the 40-year-old teacher tells them they're hot? It's still a creepy older lady, and it shouldn't be made into a fantasy. Now, moving on to the next part before I really go off on a tangent there. I want to discuss the conversation kind of that I had with my friend who is a male victim of sexual assault by a woman. I am honestly really sad that I personally knew someone who could speak to this. I put it on my Instagram and said, if you can speak on this subject, please let me know. And he reached out. I would never wish anything of this on anyone I know. And it's so crazy because I didn't know this about him. He, like I said, he's asked to stay anonymous. And I think it's kind of funny that because so many women I know who have been sexually assaulted, technically even I have, and I knew that about them. It's not even that they're all like super outspoken advocates. It's just something that women are allowed by society to be a bit more public about. But there's such a stigma around men being the victims that I didn't know this about him. And there's such a stigma around it that he wants to keep it this private. Because people have treated him so poorly about being a fucking victim. Can you believe that? Truly. And really, I'm not too surprised because of the way that society treats women when they're sexually assaulted, and we tell them, no, you're to blame, or no, you must be wrong, or you're faking it to try to ruin somebody's life. But it just never gets less confusing to me why we do that, why we blame the victim and defend the perpetrator, defend the accused. And, it blows my mind that it is so bad for men in this aspect that they can't even say, this happened to me. Like, we as women, I feel like we can say, this happened to me, and yeah, you might be accused of being something or another, and it's really hard, and you have to choose whether or not you're gonna go public with that. But it is much more acceptable for us to go public with that. For a man, it is so looked down upon that most men choose not to report it. Most men choose not to tell their friends. All of those things, that's awful. That we as a society are like that a victim of any gender can't say that they had this terrible thing happen to them. That a victim of any gender has to say, I can't tell my friends or my family about this because they'll say it was my fault, that they'll say, oh, you should have fought them off. It's terrible. Now, I asked him a few questions for us so I can give y'all a little something from his perspective, more than just statistics and that kind of thing. He couldn't answer them all because it was just really emotionally taxing just bringing up the event in general. But he said that he was grateful that I was using my platform to raise some awareness, and he was pleased to be able to do his part to kind of bring this up and hopefully start to normalize it in the sense of breaking the stigma and denormalize the idea that men can't be assaulted. So I put reverb on his responses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read my question out loud, and then I will be reading his response back. Really the only effect that I know how to do at the moment is reverb. Whoops. So I would have done some kind of distortion to my voice to make it sound cooler or way more different, but I really don't know how. So again, his responses have reverb, kind of like an echo, like if you're in a way too big room. So that is his part that I'm reading back to myself, okay? To begin, I asked him, "Did you feel like you could talk to anyone?" He said, "Short answer, no." The first person I told was a friend I'd reconnected with in the aftermath of the split with my ex, which was at least 5 to 6 months after the event. She walked out of the room. She was so angry, I guess on my behalf. Her reaction to my story was so strong that it really made me examine it really for the first time. I knew men could theoretically be assaulted, but it couldn't have been what happened to me. But it was. So, no, I didn't tell anyone for a long time, partly out of shame and partly because I had really locked down mentally how bad it was in retrospect. Very few people in my circles know it all. Did you feel that your feelings were made invalid because you're a male? Yes. There have been some people I've told that gave me such a poor reaction I was affected for days. I've had more than one professional tell me I shouldn't think about it like that and that the other party was just frustrated with me. I didn't see them further, of course, and I still dread looking for new therapists years later knowing they may not be good providers in that regard, and the story never gets easier to tell. It's a tough cycle. I'm very fortunate to have a strong and caring partner who is 100% supportive and understanding. Good on her for that. I'm really thankful for that for you. Would you say that what you're wearing had anything to do with it? I ask this question because that is so often the accusation with women. I don't know. Maybe. My place in it, it's not easy to detach shame and guilt from the whole thing. We were in our place. I was undressed. My head says no, of course not, but it's hard to not feel at fault. Are you freaking kidding me? Our society has done such a job on all of us that we still, even though we know that what we're wearing or not wearing, where we're at or where we're not at, we know that none of those things truly have anything to do with what another person decides to do to us, but we still hold ourselves responsible. I'm really upset about that. A lot of men think that men can't be sexually assaulted because they're strong and should be able to avoid being overpowered. What kind of situation were you in? / can you give a response to that? Not doing more to stop it is something I carry with me for life. Emotional abuse can do a lot to wear down the spirit. At a certain point, any resistance is just more pain. Could I have fought her off? Probably, but there's nothing good down that thought path either. I can't bring myself to play fight with my friends. The idea of putting my hands on my partner is just not in me. At that point, I was so beaten down the fight was over before it began. I think that's why it took me so long to realize how much bad I just blocked out or explained away. I don't think I can say much more on this. I'll try again soon. Friend, I want to genuinely thank you for sharing your experience with us, with me. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for trusting me with this. And I'm speaking to the listener now. I speak for both of us when I say that if you have experienced this, it's not okay. Go to someone you trust. You can come to me if you want, if you trust me like that, just like he did. Call an anonymous line. Call somebody. There are people out there who want to help you, and you deserve that. Now, I am including some resources in the show notes and the post about today's episode, as well as my sources for this episode. I hope none of y'all, male or female, have had this happen, but some of the resources I'm going to include is going to be male or female or whatever. So hopefully you never need those. Finally, if you have been sexually assaulted, I want to tell you, get to a safe place immediately, or just for in the future, just in case this happens to you. Get to a safe place immediately. Call someone who can help you, a friend, 911. Do not shower. Don't change your clothes. Don't eat or drink anything. I know that you are going to want to jump in the shower immediately because you're going to feel so gross. You're going to want to burn your clothes. You're going to want to have a drink or eat your feelings. But doing those things could destroy that physical evidence that's needed to deal with this legally. So don't do that, even though that's your first instinct. Now, further, any injuries that you may have accrued need to be treated, and you'll need to be tested for any diseases that could have been transmitted to you through the assault. So please go to the hospital. Lastly, write down everything that you can possibly remember because you may need that for legal action. And it may also be really useful for you as a coping mechanism. I am so sorry if you've ever had to deal with this, and I hope that none of you ever need this advice. But unfortunately, we live in a far from perfect world where things like this happen. And I hate that. But, we each have to do what we can to make the world a better place. And sometimes that's knowing how to deal with terrible things, whether it's for yourself or for someone else. Knowing how to deal with a horrible situation can really help. So, I leave you with this. The sexual assault hotline number, I'm also going to include in the show notes and everything. That number is 1-800-656-4673. I hope y'all never have to use any of this, but I also hope that this episode has made you realize how much more common it is. And also, I hope that this episode has made you realize that this is a genuine issue that needs to be discussed. Sexual assault is not gendered. It is a problem that everybody can face. And it's not okay, no matter who it happens to. It's not okay. And we all need to do our part to, like I said, to make the world a better place. We all need to do our part to end the stigma around it. And we all need to do our part to protect each other. Because really, humanity didn't get this far, standing up for ourselves as individuals. We can only get this far working together. So let's do that a little bit more. Work together and help each other and love each other. Y'all, thank you so much for listening. I hope that this episode was informational. Definitely not enjoyable, but informational. And I hope that it gave you some new insights into a really under-discussed topic. I want to ask you all to follow along wherever you listen. Make sure that you check out today's post on the blog for those resources. And make sure you follow us on Instagram at I've Been Thinking Pod and on Twitter at Been Thinking Pod, and also on Facebook, I've Been Thinking with Elena Grace. Thanks so much for coming. And I want to ask you guys one more thing. Please share this episode, any episode, with a friend. I hope that you love the podcast enough that you want other people to listen to. So I would be super grateful if you shared this with a friend. And make sure, if you've not already, that you enter into our giveaway that we're hosting right now until Earth Day. That is today, April 16th. We're hosting it right now until Earth Day, April 22nd, 2021, with Responsible Products. And we'll be announcing our winner next week. So go join the giveaway. Okay, guys. Thank you again for listening. And yeah, love you guys. Bye.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
New on Curiosity Stream. How do you connect a 16th century potato to limitless energy production? Could Napoleon's toothpick have a direct link to a machine that predicts the future? And how can a 1700s conch shell chart a course to humans connecting their brains to the internet? James Burke's visionary series Connections returns for a new generation. Experience all new Connections. With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.